we've just taken a 2-minute washroom break, and then we're going to get into regular. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that we've got our trustees that are online. They're back online. Trustee Ainsley, are you there?
I am.
Trustee Rowland, are you there?
Yes.
Trustee Pachakowski, are you there? Yep. Okay. So I'm going to call our meeting. Left. Did somebody just leave? Trustee Pachakowski, are you there? Okay, we're going to move forward. I'm going to call our meeting to order of the Sunrise School Division for for January the 20th. We have 6 trustees that are here with us. Trustee Barry, Trustee Duma, Trustee Harris, Trustee Reed, Trustee Nickel, and myself, Paul Magno. And we have 2 trustees that are on the line, Trustee Ainsley and Trustee Rowland. And I think Trustee Pachakowski is going to join us very shortly. Trustee Pachakowski, are you back with us?
Joined.
Okay, so Trustee Pachakowski. So we have all our 9 trustees in our room. We have Superintendent Timko, Secretary George Carlton, we have Assistant Superintendent Julian, and then we have board support Stacy Bonato. So we have O Canada by the Hoozle Choir at Oakbank Elementary. Please stand if you can do so. Thank you to the, hopefully I'm saying this right, Hoosleigh Choir. And is this the choir that we have Principal Denica from Oak Bank Elementary? He is part of, so thanks Principal Denica for performing there. 1.3 is our treaty acknowledgement, and I'm going to ask Trustee Barry to go ahead and read out our treaty acknowledgement, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty Territory 1. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in the spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. 2.0 is the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the board approve the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Duma, seconded by Trustee Nicol. Any questions to this? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote electronically. So thank you. That is everyone that has joined the meeting, and it's 9-0. Thank you. 3.1 talks about chair's comments and sharing a story. A reminder that if you have questions, please send them into scarlton@sunrisesd.ca. Name and address of the sender certainly to be included in your email. That's scarlton@sunrisesd.ca, and we'll try to answer your questions later on in the evening. Certainly about sharing a story. I'm going to open it up to the trustees. Anybody want to go ahead and share a story? Anybody online want to share a story first? Is there anybody in the room here that would like to share a story? Superintendent Timko.
Monday morning I had the opportunity to go to transportation, and I got to use the radio out to all of the bus drivers so that I could congratulate Jean Wozni, who we hired on that day 50 years ago in 1972, and she is still happily and pleasantly and very effectively driving one of our buses. So I got to do a little radio announcement up to Jean, and we're super proud of her.
Well, congratulations, Jean, for certainly going ahead and doing that, and thank you for getting our kids to school. I certainly want to share a story. Certainly it's about what takes place certainly on snow days and on cold days, and about people up early in the morning, and our senior admin team are up doing those kind of things, and kudos to them for making decisions that are safe for our kids. Those aren't always easy discussions when you go ahead and have to make those decisions, so kudos to the senior admin team for going ahead and doing that. I also want to share a story that I continue to spend some time at Powerview School talking to the principal, and lo and behold, we put in outdoor ice at Powerview School, and who was out there shoveling the rink with his son was Principal Reed, and getting it ready so that the town fire department could come and flood. Thanks to Derek for us getting light out there so that the rink is open and it's got a light out there for the kids into the evening. So kudos to Principal Reed for the work that he continues to do in supporting the school at Powerview. Any others sharing a story before we move on? Okay. So 4.1 is we have the Springwell and Hoffer Colony Schools, and Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, so we're going to do a little bit of technological savvy stuff, I hope. Can you three hear me, Benji, George, and Jody? Yep. Okay, so we can see...
Yes, I can hear you very clear.
Awesome, we can hear you here as well.
Paul, I hardly understand, Paul. My word is that.
I just need to do one sound check, George, about our folks on the phone. Can the folks on the phone hear our presenters?
That's a negative.
Hello?
No, I can't.
So you can't hear George or Jody or Benji?
No, nothing.
Okay, Jody, can you talk through it?
Hi, it's Jody here.
Nothing?
I heard something, but it sounds like he's at the other end of a tunnel. It's really faint.
Okay, so we're going to have to do the best we can because we're in a place where one of the things of the pandemic, and I'm going to introduce George Waldner and Benji Hofer, is that on our colony situation, it's a communal living situation, and we have to have permission to both come onto the colony and leave the colony. And that's one of those things where it's important. Let me just do this. Try that. How's that? Better. One of those things where George and Benji are tucked neatly at their colony, and they're going to present to you here on site on the screen. If the folks on the phone can maybe tune into the live stream, that might help you with the volume as well. Okay, Jody, all you.
Okay, so we're going to start with George Waldner from Springwell School. Can I start?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm George Waldner. I'm the teaching principal here at Springwell School, and I have been since 1997, I believe. I'm going to start my presentation off by talking a little bit about our colony's educational goals and what our colony is committing to education, then going to our school goal, and finally a question and answer period. Short and sweet and to the point, I hope. Joey, can you pass on the slide, please? So our colony has made an extremely concerted effort and commitment to ensure that our children and youth are provided with the best educational experiences possible. And as a result of that, in 1999, they established a goal that every child, male and female, will graduate with a regular Manitoba High School diploma. No exceptions will be given, and dropout will not be an option. Since that time, we've had 41 students enter high school. 29 of those have graduated. 2 have left the colony before graduating, and 10 are still enrolled between 9 and 12. So for a colony of 110 people, I think that's a pretty significant number of graduates in that many years. Next, please. So our colony built in 1998 or 1999, I'm not exactly sure when we moved into this building. They built a modern and well-planned facility which is still conducive to good educational practices. And as you can see, these are some of our main classrooms, the early years on the right, and my classroom, the middle years classroom over on the left, on my left. I'm not sure if that's your left or your right in your world there, but it is here, so. Next. The colony for many, many years, because it felt the arts, music, and physics was important, and our enrollment back then, or our STEM formula didn't allow for what we thought was enough teaching time, so for many, many years they purchased extra teaching time to supplement whatever the school division had put in. And that was, I believe, for about 9 or 10 years, and then our enrollments went up, the formula changed, and since we haven't had to purchase any extra teaching time except for EA time. Next. Our colony continues to support our school with volunteer librarians who catalog, organize, and have all our books properly stored and barcoded on our library system. And these are just a few pictures of what our library looks like, well, a couple weeks ago. Next. Out of school opportunities, our colony is very, very open to providing many of those. If it says physical activity, like as you can see in one of the pictures, we have a pretty modern hockey rink with our own Zamboni. We've had the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra come out to the colony, so everybody on the colony, not just the kids or the students, can be exposed to more of the arts. And we've also had other productions out in the colony, as you can see from the bottom picture. That's a play that was brought to the colony by a theatre group in one of the other colonies. And of course, swimming lessons at the Beausejour Splash Pool every summer is also provided by the colony. So, next. To this day, our colony is still contributing to support our educational efforts here at the school by purchasing extra EA time to work mostly with speech and language, literacy and numeracy developments in K-8 only. The EA top off for 2019 to 2020 was approximately $9,800, and that figure may not be accurate. I wasn't able to pull out the actual figure, but I believe it was in that ballpark. And then this year, 2021-22, that should be not 2021, was about $5,800 as well. And that's to mostly work with our K-4 and then some of our grade 5 to 8 students in the afternoon, one-on-one for literacy and numeracy. Next. So our school composition, we have one classroom that's a K-4, and we have a teacher in there, of course, Lisa Ray, and then Jessica Hens as the EA. And as you can see from the slide, even though there's not that many students in each grade, the K-4 curriculum still needs to be covered. So it's still a big challenge to get everything in that those kids are supposed to get by the time they come into the middle years classroom. Plus there's 3 students in speech and language every day that have to also be taken into account. Any questions so far? I'm going too fast. Can everybody hear me or? Okay, next.
Keep going, George. We hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Then we have another classroom. It's the grade 5 to 9 classroom, and that's my classroom. I'm the teacher in this classroom, and also the I guess you could say the ITV HBNI proctor. I have grade 5, 6, 7, 9 students, which I teach directly, and then also 2 students in speech and language, which our EA works with every afternoon for about half an hour. And this is my classroom, and part of one of our ITV studios through the door there. Next. In addition to these 2 classrooms, we also have 3 ITV students studios where the courses are beamed in from as far away as Brandon or Portage or as close as, I don't know, Winnipeg maybe. And it is not the ideal teaching situation or learning situation, but with our lower numbers in the high school grades, it would be, I think it would be pretty ridiculous having a teacher for grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12 if there's only 2 or 3 students in each of these grades. So the best we can come up with, or the best that I think any of us could do, is provide these students with an ITV, HBNI opportunity. And these courses are totally interactive. They see the teacher sees them, and the students also see the other students, and they do get together in occasionally, not now with COVID and all that, but they do get together for gatherings and some lab work for biology and such. Next. So our 2019 to 2022 goal was problem solving. When we went over our notes and our data, report card marks, it became quite consistently clear that problem solving was a big issue and was lacking all across the board. So that's why we decided to go with the problem solving goal for those years. Next. The data over the 3 years, those years is shown on the graph, and this is taken directly from the report cards. I forget what the program is called, through the division that Gord put on OneDrive for us. There was no real decrease in the abilities, but there was also not enough increase, we felt, except for 2021, when you can see the brown goes up a little bit, which we want the brown graph all the way up and the yellow and the gray all the way down. The gray would be at 2, the yellow at 3, and the brown would be at 4. So we want the yellow and the gray to go down and the brown to go up, and it's not nearly enough of the brown. Next. This data here is directly from a program we use to help us achieve our goals, and it's the Mathletics program. If this program is done properly and students are properly enrolled, the data that you can collect from this is invaluable, it's irreplaceable. So if you look at the graph over on my left side where it says independent activity improvement, they've gone, and all students have improved from 69.5% up to 74, about 75% since September. And the graph over on the right with all the students' names blacked out there, the yellow is 85 or higher, the blue is 50 to 84%, and the reddish brownish graph is 50% or lower. As you can see from looking at the graph, we only have one student that's all yellow. And that is a total surprise to us because that student was a struggling reader, but I think the reason that she is so much better now is because she actually takes the time to read the problem properly. The lower you come down on the graph with the more brown showing, that's many of our earlier students who are still struggling with understanding and learning the language, never mind actually understanding and being able to solve the problem. We want more yellow, a lot more yellow. We don't want any brown, but we do want a lot more blue on that as well. Any questions on this?
Yeah, George, I have one. It's Paul. So
Yeah.
George, on the report card data that you showed, you made a comment is that you don't have enough brown. How do you get more brown?
Working with students, focusing on the problem, where the weaknesses are, where your challenges are for the students. And that's why we have the problem solving as a goal. I'll come to some of our strategies in the next slide. Did I answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, I'm just, you talked about from 2019 to 2021, you're looking to get more brown, and I'm just saying you're looking for improvement in this area. So my question is,
Yes.
How are you doing it? If you have it coming up later, then perfect.
I only got part of the last question, but... So we teach daily math problem-solving strategies, skills across the curriculum, and this data only includes K-8 because once your students enter high school, again, we sort of pass them over to the ITV system. We do work with them a little bit, as much as we can, but this data is mostly K-8. We teach students the vocabulary and the technology such as the sum, quotient. This may not seem important, but if a student doesn't even know what a sum or a quotient is, how do we expect them to be able to understand the problem and be able to solve the problem? We also demonstrate the civic reading skills conducive to good problem solving such as circle, highlight, underline keywords, and numbers. We're finding this to be very effective. Continuously assessing students, their strengths, weaknesses, to prepare and to form our next steps. It has been hard since January because we've only been back, 2 full days now since the Christmas break. And we meet as a group in school and with Superintendent Kimpo on a regular basis to discuss next steps, share our successes, what worked well, what did not work, and what we need to change. Any questions on any of this? Before I go into school budgets? So our school budget, the small school is the biggest, our main budget, I would say. We use it mostly for day-to-day expenditures such as online subscriptions, that may be teacher pay teacher, super teacher worksheets, anything that will help us improve student learning. And offset other minimum budget lines such as phys ed, library, and science supplies. I think our library and phys ed budget lines, I didn't look, but I think they're only a few $100, which doesn't buy a lot of phys ed equipment or maybe 2 or 3 library books. So we have to supplement it with something else. Our EAL budget is approximately $7,000, and it's used entirely to pay for some of our EA time. And yes, BDM was $2,016 this year, and we are using it mostly for library books, guided reading, and classroom reading materials, again, mostly for the early to middle years students. Next. Conclusion. Springwell School, in conjunction with Brightstone Colony and the Sunrise School Division, we will continue to work for, advocate, and make decisions based on best practices and the education needs of our students and community. Like I said before, we're a pretty small community, population-wise, and we're kind of proud of what we've accomplished in the last few years. Any questions?
George, I'm going to ask around the room if there are any questions for you.
Sure.
Are there any questions online? So George, one question I'm going to go ahead and ask you. You've obviously got a great graduation rate. So what are you doing that's getting you 100% of your kids graduating?
What do we do to get 100% of our kids to graduate? And I think we cannot do it on our own. We need the help from the school division by providing the essentials, what we need. Also, our students know from the time they can come to school that they're not leaving this place until they graduate. That's just a commitment that the colony made in 1999, and try to make it as interesting as possible, be it with field trips, be it bringing in the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, taking them to plays, whatever we can, Paul, we do. We don't want our kids, we're not fooling ourselves. Our kids do leave the colony, and they do pursue other areas of interest, and we do not want them to leave without at least a good grade 12 education to help them on their way. I have a daughter in Calgary. I do not want her to be I will not want her to be there without at least a grade 12. So having that commitment and having that in your mind as a parent and as a member of our community, I think helps us achieve this goal.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
Trustee Duma? Trustee Duma has a question for you, George.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Just, you have that piece about school budget. Are those...
Can't hear you. Okay.
Has that changed in the last 3 years, 4 years, or has it been fairly consistent? The dollar amount?
I would say it's been fairly consistent in the dollar amounts. The only thing that has changed in our budget is that our colony has had to, in the last 2 years, supplement thousands of dollars, as you saw, to top off our EA to full-time. We cannot function, even with our lower numbers, we cannot function without a full-time EA. So to answer your question, yeah, it has stayed quite consistent.
There doesn't appear to be any other questions in the room or online. So Jody, I think we're switching over. George, you're off the hot seat. Thank you very much. You did a brilliant job. And Benji, it's you. See if you can follow that act.
Hi, am I coming through loud and clear? Okay, so I'm Benjamin Hofer. I'm the principal teacher at Hofer School. This is my 11th year working for Sunrise School Division. This is my 3rd year as principal. I like hunting, fishing, long walks on the beach, candlelit steak dinners. I'm a dad to 4 daughters. And in all honesty, this is a little bit of a walk of a park coming to school compared to being with them all day. So my wife doesn't have it too easy. Next. A little bit about our school, the enrollments and staffing. So currently we have 44 students altogether. We have 6 kindergarten students, 18 grade 1 to 4 students, 8 grade 5 to 8 students, and 12 high school students. However, that is going to change quite dramatically. 4 years from now, we will graduate hopefully 11 students. And during that time period, we will gain around 23. It's 22 or 23 students. So we're going to have be in the mid-50s in this relatively small school. As for our staffing, we employ 3.4 teachers. 0.9 is me. 2 others that are full-time. 1 that is 0.5. And the admin, of course, me. We do have a full-time EA, down from 1.5 last year. She is mostly busy with one of our special needs students and helps out in the early years classroom because we have 6 kindergarten students and 8 grade 1 students, and apparently they're tough to handle. Next. This would be my classroom. So I teach grade 7, 8, and some high school courses. At this point, mostly math. I also oversee all the ITD programming, so if they need help with anything, or the long distance courses as well. If they need help, I'm their go-to guy. I help them as much as I can. I also teach a couple of grade 7 classes, math and ELA. Next. So this is the computer lab where the high school students basically are at work every day. The large window that you see, I essentially cut a window into the studio just so I can keep an eye on them. Usually I would have my grade 9 students in there just since they're new to this and they have a tendency to not behave the way they're supposed to. We currently have 2 studios plus another one for the student with special needs, so it's kind of her own little space that she has. Next, please. This is basically just one of the studios. Fortunately, we are able to maintain 2-meter distancing. Next. This would be the early years classroom, well, partially early years, K to 2. Technically, it should be K to 3. But because of the high numbers of students that are coming in lately, we had to make this into the K to 2 classroom, and we had to take the grade 3 students and move them into the grade 4 to 6 classroom. So here we've got 1 full-time teacher. Again, she's got like 16 students. We do have our EA helping in here during the mornings. She deals basically with the kindergarten students. Next, please. This is the middle years classroom. It's kind of a split classroom. They kind of tag teach, Laura and us, and then used to be Andrea Davis, but she's on leave currently. Basically in here we've got science, ELA, math, music. They're all over the place. So it is a pretty busy classroom. Currently they usually have around 12 students in there, and they have the older, occasionally grade 7 and 8 students in the adjoining classroom. Next, please. So our graduation rate, interestingly, in 2006, we actually had our first graduation ceremony with students that actually graduated with a K-12 education. Before that, we've had 3 students that came back as mature students and graduated with their GED. And 2006 is also my graduating class. So there were 3 of us at that time. And again, that was the first year that we've had K-12 graduates. Since then, we've had approximately around 40 grads. I'd say we have around a 90% graduation rate. There's about 4 or 5 students that didn't graduate. However, that is changing. One student actually did come back. She finished off, and I'm actually working with 2 other students that are not attending. They're actually wanting to come back as well. I'm actually basically in the middle of signing one student up for a few courses. He said he wants 5 or 6 courses. I told him, we'll do 2 or 3 for now, and we'll see where you're at. But he's pretty determined, so... Oh, sorry. Next, Jody. So HSAP, the High School Apprenticeship Program, I think that plays a huge and significant role in our school. I'm always in contact with Greg Link, and we have a pretty good system. Currently, all of our students, our high school students, are signed up for the High School Apprenticeship Program at some point. They can get up to 8 credits. However, we basically had one student that actually required all of those 8 credits to graduate. Usually it's just 2, 3, maybe 4 of those credits that they actually need to meet the requirements of 30 credits. So technically, most students graduated around 34 to 36 high school credits actually. I will provide you with some examples of the different programs that they're enrolled in. Next, please. So what you see here is part of a very large hog operation. We breed about 1,000 sows. We ship up to 30,000 pigs a year, usually around 600 a week. We have had a few students enrolled as pork technicians. Our pork technicians, I believe 2 or 3 of them, are actually certified pork technicians. So again, this is just one part of the hog operation. This is strictly the breeding and farrowing operation. So you would actually move the weanlings at 21 days or 28 days and actually transport them off to a different location that is on site though. Next, please. Just a cute picture of some piglets. Next, please. So what you see here is actually the last year or so, or maybe half a year, we actually went out and completely renovated all of our barns. We're actually still in the process of renovating one of them. The one you see here right now is the breeding barn. This is all loose housing. So instead of being locked up in crates for basically 90% of their life, they're actually probably roaming around 90% of their life now. And how this works is basically they establish their dominance and they essentially line up here like hot dogs, sleep, and so forth. There's feeding systems all over the place. The pigs are actually chipped. They walk through the feeder system. It drops X amount of food, whatever they can eat, and so forth. What we have to the left is actually these are, well, maybe a little bit older than weanlings, so these are probably around 28 days. Here we have a future graduate of over school, hopefully. So we do start them out at quite a young age. A lot of times the kids will go work with their dads, even around the age of 9, 10, 11, try to give them some kind of responsibility. Some of those kids are actually building pallets for the Gustav Sod farm. It's about 50% play, 50%, well, let's say 70% play, 30% work. So yeah, we a lot of them also babysit during the day, especially the girls. The boys, a lot of times we need them to babysit while the adults go to lunch. So they are most definitely given some responsibility at an early age. Next, please. So what you have here is a very small part of our farming aspect of the colony. We do grow several thousand acres. We farm several thousand acres of land. We are all over the place with the types of things we grow. We grow beans, we grow barley, we grow wheat, the whole 9 yards. A lot of times we will have them on the tractor at quite a young age. That is somewhat changing. I remember when I was growing up, I was driving the grain cart at 15 already. Now it's a little bit older, simply because this is some serious heavy-duty equipment, so we need to be careful with it. However, there are times when they are pulled out of school for an hour or so, occasionally once in a while, just to help with farming, watch the other little things like that. So that is another just a wealth of experience for them right there by the time they're 18. Next, please. We actually work for ETCO, or the Alberta Trader Company. These are the traders that you would see on different construction sites. I seem to be echoing. Why is that? Am I still loud and clear? It's just on my end then. So these are essentially built from scratch. Basically, the only thing that we didn't build is the windows, the doors, the air conditioning units, and things like that. Even the steel skid that they're sitting on, that is actually built right on the colony. We do have a certified welder, and one of the students that is actually wanting to return to high school, I guarantee you had his hand in there somewhere. We've had 2 students now that were signed up for the welding courses or helping out with blacksmithing, so most definitely their hand is in there, as I guarantee. We do have up to 5 students in the carpentry program, if not more. And again, they would have most definitely been involved with almost all aspects of what you see here, inside and outside. And these are totally finished. Like the floors laid. We used to build them quite simple, just one huge room, but it has changed significantly over the years as well. I will show you in a second. Can you move on? So if you ever see this sticker on one of these construction trailers, you can tell that is ours. So Gringo Colony Manufacturing, basically. And we have seen them all over the place. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty cool. Next. So again, as I was saying, these are built entirely from scratch on site. Again, the skids themselves on the bottom, those are built by us as well. And again, we do currently have 2 or 3 high school students enrolled in the carpentry program, and they would be helping out with here on a daily basis, actually. They usually report to work from around 3:45 to maybe 5:15. And then they're generally there all day Saturday, and of course summer holidays, winter break, spring break, and so forth. Next, please. This is, as I mentioned before, it used to be just one big room, but now we are actually we've custom built quite a few over the last 2 or 3 years. I think we've been doing this for about 8 years now. And we've even had some that had showers built in, sinks, flush toilets, the whole 9 yards. We actually did build a couple the last year for a school around here. I'm not sure what the school name is, but yeah, again, it's not just the construction traders that you would see on the construction sites or whatever. We built schools, we built a storefront, and a couple of other things as well. Next, please. So this is our community kitchen. How this works is basically the women and the go on rotation it's about every 10 weeks. that it's their turn to prepare food for 167 people 3 times a day. So you've got a solid breakfast, you've got a solid lunch, and a good supper. All the high school girls will be enrolled will basically work here for their age at some point. And the amount of experience here, again, is it's incredible. It's basically from the garden to the plate. We do raise a lot of our own vegetables. We do raise, a lot of our meats are from the colony, like poultry. We actually started raising beef somewhat. We obviously raise our own pork. So, and they actually do help out with the butchering as well, sausage making, steak and lobster dinners, they do all that. It's just incredible what they're exposed to. Next, please. What you have here, you might not look it, but this house is approximately 25, 30 years old. So what we did was we essentially gutted the entire inside and had it completely renovated. Again, we would have high school students helping out all the time. Even some of the high school students that were enrolled in the apprenticeship program, they actually went on, and they're still, actually they've been doing that for up to 15 years now, well not 15, maybe 13, 14 years. One of these students that was enrolled in the program originally, he is almost the head carpenter. Like any big project or anything like that, he's basically the main guy there and doing what needs to be done. All of this, the linoleum, the stippling, the paint, everything is done by our guys. Even the cupboards, the cabinets were made by us. However, the doors were not. Those, I believe, are from Springfield Woodworking. Next, please. So, this is why we're here, I guess. The school plan. So why literacy? So a few years ago, I took over as basically, I had to make sure that our students actually graduate from high school. So I oversaw the HDNI, your distance learning program, and all of that. I made sure they had the necessary credits and so forth. I made sure they were in class on time. Administered the tests, whatever needed to be done. That was kind of on me. So, however, what I noticed, or not necessarily noticed, but I was receiving emails continuously from their teachers saying, "Hey, what's going on with your students? We're asking them questions. They don't respond. They can't respond. They just don't seem to know what's going on." So, whenever I get an email like that, I go talk to them, okay, what in the world is going on? Why are you not responding? Well, it's usually, well, we didn't know the answer. We didn't know what to say. So at this point, I decided, okay, we need to do something about it. You guys, even if it might not be the right answer, a lot of times they're asking for your opinion. You don't necessarily need a straight-out answer. So we decided, okay, we need to focus on just getting you confident enough to actually respond to those questions, or try to respond, or even contribute to the class discussions in any way, shape, or form. Because at this point, they were not participating at all. And I believe it was mostly a lack of confidence on their part, and again, a lot of times, they couldn't really read between the lines. If the answer wasn't right in front of them, they had no idea what to say. Next, please, Julie. So, if you have a school plan, the K-2 classroom has their own, the grade 3 to 6 classroom has their own as well. However, what Kathy and I have been focusing on with our operational visits is the grade 7 to 8 classroom. So as I mentioned before, I do the 7-8 classroom, grade 7 ELA. So my goal is by June 2022, 100% of the grade 7 students will apply inferencing skills to readings from the Sightlines textbook. So why did I choose the Sightlines textbook? There's just an abundance of stories, poems, pictures to analyze, just all kinds of different things to analyze. And the reason I like it so much is there's really no one answer. A lot of the endings, they have a really great twist. a lot of times you have no way of telling what's going to happen. A lot of times even the ending is kind of open-ended. So it's those different things that I want to realize, hey, just because the answer is not there, that doesn't mean it can't be this. Maybe it's this, and so forth. So, next please. So my indicators, how will I know that we're actually making some improvements? Provide answers that demonstrate improvement and depth. Participate in discussions to build a knowledge base before making inferences. Question inferences brought forward by their peers. Challenge suggestions of their teachers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to provide you with a couple of examples of what we have been doing in the classroom, and where I can actually say, or Kathy and myself can say, hey, this is actually working. So since then, I've actually made quite a few changes to the way I teach, and I'll explain it right away. So what you see here is the novel study Island of the Blue Dolphins. It is a relatively easy read, I would say. I think it is grade level, grade 7 or 8 for sure. So before we even tackled the novel itself, we really dove into the background of this story. Is it a true story? Did it actually happen? Where did it take place? So we really dug in first, just to give them an idea of what's coming, and that way they actually have something to go on. So a lot of times we would have classroom discussions, and of course some reading comprehension questions. And generally, what we did, okay, there's a set of questions. Here you go. Finish them off. I'll give you 15 minutes, or whatever the case may be, or 20 minutes. And hand them in. Fine and dandy. However, what I realized was, next please, that no, this wasn't fine and dandy at all. So what you see to your left is each of these lines is actually an answer to a question. No matter the complexity of the question, it was basically a one-liner. If it asked to describe the main character, in this case Karana, the answer was basically, or they provided a name, they called her brave, and said black hair. That's it. So I really had to backtrack here and really change the way I teach as well. So what I told them, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. We are going to focus on 2 questions. I want you to take 2 questions. I'll give you X amount of time. And I really want you to dig in. And just once I'm actually reading your questions, I should have a very good idea of the story. I shouldn't even have to read the book. I should just be able to read your answers, and I should have a very good summary of the book. So we started doing this, and they did a couple questions. They weren't great. They weren't fantastic. Yes, the answers were correct and so forth. But what I noticed was that they were answering the questions from memory. So they weren't even picking up the novel, flipping back, finding the information that they need in order to answer the question. So the first thing I had to tell them, okay, pick up the novel, find the page where this question is answered, summarize it, and answer the question thoroughly. So I had to do that again. They still didn't quite get it, somewhat. They were getting better already. So what I did was we did a couple examples with them. I kind of told them I want the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. So just boom, boom, 3 words and you're done. So what you see on the right is actually a answer to one question. So basically, just a change that I've seen in that regard is just monumental. It's been pretty incredible. Next, please. So even at this, just a couple weeks later, they were already asking really relevant and insightful questions. Questions that I couldn't really even answer for them. One of them was, how did they know the people on the ship were not a threat even before they spoke to them? And even they brought up slave traders. They were bringing up prior knowledge that honestly I wasn't even aware of, or I wasn't thinking about. So already within a few weeks, I was seeing that progress already. Next, please. Excuse me. So another things that we had to do was we were working with alternate short stories, and they had a bunch of different questions, reading comprehension questions in the back. And again, I picked one question, made an objective. Okay, this is what we need to answer. How are we going to do this? Well, it turns out that just by reading the story that was provided, we found out that there is no way to actually answer the question accurately. It's just, there was so much information missing, the answer wasn't even fair to ask. So we did a little bit more digging, and we actually found out that the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal had nothing, it's not really even a shipping canal. It was basically made 100 years prior just to divert sewage water into the Mississippi River, into the Great Lakes. And there was absolutely no mention of that in the story at all. So already we were realizing, hey, maybe the answer is not always in front of us. We really need to do our independent research. We need to know, where do we look? Do we just take everything up? This is it, boom, boom, write down an answer and we're done? And it's just one of those things where we're starting to realize, you know what, just because the text says this, is this really true? Is this really the way it is? So already they were starting to question me, they were starting to question the texts, they're starting to question their peers, which is all something, which are the indicators, exactly the indicators that I am looking for. Next, please. So one step back, two steps forward. So around right before, I believe it was mid-November or so, that when we started to develop essays, kind of like a really formal, finalized, polished product. So the inferencing part, the asking those types of questions, they got, but then I realized, wow, they really can't tell me what's going on. They really can't summarize the story, or they have no way of plucking out what's important and just putting it down in 2 or 3 sentences. So what I did was, for the next 6 weeks, I actually focused on summarizing chapters, short stories, whatever the case may be. And I told them, I gave them a clear objective. This is what we're doing. We're going to read this story once or twice, on your own, as a class, who knows, doesn't really matter. But your objective is strictly to summarize the story, or the chapter, whatever the case may be. I did have to give them some restrictions or some guidelines, because as soon as I hand out assignments, there's always this one student, oh, I don't know what to do. So what I just tell them, okay, I need 3 to 5 sentences, 100 words, or whatever the case may be. Just pull out maybe 2 points, 3 points, just so they have something. And once they have that, they're usually good to go. You can move on, Joey. So what we have been using the last 3 years, I believe, if not 4, Joanna Captain, the literacy leader, Sunrise School Division, introduced this program to George and myself. Again, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. So it is just a huge program that assesses students on 6 different literacy skills. Predicting, summarizing, making connections, questioning, inferencing, and reflecting. I just did the assessment right before Christmas break. And, well, we'll move to the next slide, please. So what you see here is how they're actually graded. So a 4 is proficient, 3 is skilled, 2 is independent, and 1 is just fluent. So again, these would be, to the left you have the 6 skills, basically all the literacy skills one will need. And I knew that their inferencing, question, connection skills were quite weak. So this was primarily what I wanted to focus on, even though reflecting. So what we have here, even though the numbers seem relatively low, like you've got the average is 2.13, 2.25, you've got a 2, you've got a 3 here. Yes, the numbers seem relatively low, but when you actually compare it to what those numbers represent, I'd say they're actually quite high. These students are, I think, where they're supposed to be. They are most definitely making progress. No, they're not exactly skilled or proficient in all of these different skills. But again, from what I saw from the beginning of the year up until now, I think we've just made incredible success. We've made incredible success. Even their reading itself, they're fluent. They're very expressive. That they have down pat. Well, the oral reading is here. So even in the summarizing part, they did a really good job as well. They had charts, they had pictures, they had paragraphs, they had key definitions, the whole 9 yards. Next, please. So any questions, compliments, or comments?
I have one, Benji. I was concerned about bringing the colony here into the room, and I love how you made everybody feel exactly what you would feel if you went to a colony. Very often when I come to visit you, it's not about what we're going to talk about. It's about coming to visit your wife and your kids and having a coffee and a piece of cake and going to see something, and then we get down to the business of what we need to do. And you did actually a really good job of exactly what you would do if someone in the room came to visit you in your colony. If you shared the things you're proud of first. And I know that sometimes that stretches it out, but that's exactly what would happen if folks came to see you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You guys are welcome for a visit anytime.
Benji, I'm just going to ask trustees if they have any questions for you. Any trustees in the room have a question? Trustee Duma?
Just a question about school-based decision-making dollars, et cetera, EA money. Have those things changed over the years for you? Do you see that there's a greater need or a less need? And thank you for giving us a tour. I loved it. Thanks.
I heard something about the SBDM dollars and how it's changed.
The question, Benji, is over the years in the budgeting, this SBDM and the budget dollars, and has that stayed pretty much the same, or has that changed over the last sort of number of years? Kind of the same question I think that George had.
Well, the problem is I've only been doing this for 3 years. So what things looked like before, I really can't say. In the first 2 years where I was the principal, we had to put a lot of money, almost all of our EAL money, towards hiring or adding on to our EA time. We were 1.5 up until this year, so what I did was I supplemented an EA for an extra few months, so she was actually full-time. Some SBDM dollars have gone to improving technology in the classroom. Last year, almost all of our EAL money went to our EA, but this year we decided, you know what, we'd have to go way out of our way to actually get her here even 0.5. I'd have to use a lot of my school budget money. I'd have to use a lot of my, I'd even have to approach the colony for some funding, and I said, you know what, let's work with what we've got, and let's focus on literacy from a different standpoint. Let's buy books. Let's buy literacy series. Let's do all that. Let's buy some supplies instead of spending all that money on an EA. It has worked out relatively well. We kind of made some changes in that regard. The one EA that we do have, she should be spending most of the time with students with special needs. She's in a wheelchair. She's got spinal muscular atrophy, so her mobility is very limited. So what I told her, okay, you know what we're going to do? I'm teaching grade 9 math anyways. I'll make sure she's in my classroom. I'll make sure she's here, and you know what? I'll keep an eye on her during that time. In the meantime, you go help with the kindergarten students. And then, so that morning is taken care of, so in the afternoon, then she would spend most of the day with her. As for the budget, if it's changed dramatically in the last 3 years, the only thing that I have noticed is that our EAL budget is going up a little bit, simply because of the high number of students that are coming in. I mean, we're used to 2, 3, 4, around 4 students per grade, not even 3 on average. And all of a sudden, we have 8 students in one grade. That year, we actually broke the record in all the Schneider-like colonies in Manitoba, I believe, for the highest number of births. So 8 students in 1 year is just a huge number. And again, we're seeing 6 students in kindergarten this year. If you go down the line, it's 5, 4, 6. It's just crazy, those numbers.
Storyteller,
The
you answered the question.
Oh,
I think what I heard you say is that, yeah, the monies are about the same amount, but you're using them in different ways. Is that fair, Benji?
fair enough. You're the wind beneath my wings.
Thanks, Benj. Are there any other questions? Anybody online have a question for Benji? So I don't think Benji, anybody else has any
No worries.
questions? So thanks very much, Benji, for coming and presenting to us. Thanks, Jody, for helping out. And George, if you're still there, thanks very much for coming and presenting to us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. This was actually more fun than I anticipated.
Yeah, it was fun for us.
Next year, hopefully it'll be in person.
It was also very illuminating, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I dismissed now?
You're dismissed.
Bye.
I think Betty probably wants to take that last 5 minutes back. Comments, so we're going to move on, and I'll comment on that after. 5.1, we're moving on to the adoption of our minutes. So we have minutes for January the 4th. Be it resolved that the board adopt our January 4th board meeting minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Harris, seconded by Trustee Nicol. Questions to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. Yeah, Jared, you got your mic on. We can hear you talking. So we have 7 people that voted yes, and we have 2 people that abstained. Thank you. We now have superintendent's report. Kathy?
Yeah, I will be brief. You have the report in front of you. I think the biggest change is that we have our students back to in-class learning now. We've had some apprehension and some nerves around that, but the schools are still doing all of the safety measures in terms of masking, in terms of distancing, in terms of sanitizing and reminding families to keep kids home when they're sick, and following the isolation guidelines. So there's a ton of other information there, and I just want to make sure that folks know that our kids are excited about being in classes, and we are not dropping any of the safety measures. We're doing all of the safety measures, plus to keep kids safe and well while they're at school. I'll leave the rest unless there's questions.
So there's lots of information there. Questions from any trustees in the room here? Doesn't seem like there are any. Are there any questions from the trustees that are on the phone?
Yeah, Trustee Inslee, I have some questions.
Go ahead, Karen.
Somebody's got them. Oh, you've turned it off now. Just a few questions. I'll just ask the questions, and Kathy, you can hopefully answer them. I'm just wondering what qualifies as a medical mask. Is that an N95, and are teachers and staff required to pay for them themselves? If not, who pays for them? It says medical masks are encouraged where possible for the students. So when it says encouraged, does that mean that they don't have to wear medical masks? There's a bit about the masks can be removed indoors when eating, drinking, and short infrequent breaks, but could you just clarify about that they definitely are not required outdoors? I know I've asked that question in the past. And just looking at the latter part of your report, and I apologize because I can't remember off the top of my head whether this was required or is voluntary information from the parents to declare their child's vaccination status. I honestly, I apologize for not remembering what was said in the previous board meeting, because it says if there's a positive rapid test or PCR test, they must isolate for 5 days if they're vaccinated, but they must isolate for 10 if they're not vaccinated. So how do we know if they're vaccinated or not vaccinated? From memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that parents could volunteer that information if they wanted to, but they didn't have to give that. So I'm just, if it is voluntary, sorry for all the questions, if it is voluntary, how do we know whether or not they should be off for 5 days or 10 days? So did you remember every question?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a whirl. Are you ready? Get your pencil. Staff, medical masks are provided, so like the one that I have on, the blue and the white, those are provided by the province, the government of Manitoba. Teachers and staff are not supplied with N95 masks. They can have their own and wear their own, but the province or the division are not supplying N95 masks for staff. KN95s are not medical, and so they shouldn't be used. In terms of encouraging students to use medical masks, they aren't required to wear a medical mask, but if they would like to, we have those available for students when they arrive at school, or they can come with their own from home, or they can use a 3-ply mask. In terms of masks outdoors, there are no masks that need to be worn outdoors. And then the last one was around declaring vaccination status. We're not policing vaccination status, nor are we gathering vaccination status. Our job now has switched from contact tracing and ensuring that people are away for the right amounts of times to providing information. So essentially what we're saying to families are, please know what the isolation guidelines are. We'll help with those questions, but we don't gather student vaccination status, and we don't enforce whether someone is or isn't isolating at home. How'd I do?
Yeah, you did quite. You must have wrote really fast when I was asking all the questions. Yeah, I think. Oh, somebody's got their microphone still switched on.
Oh, it's me.
Oh, okay. So medical, just the medical grade masks. So medical grade masks are not N95 masks. I just wondered what a medical grade mask was. Is that a 3-ply or? Sorry, I'm just wanting clarification.
2 kinds of medical masks, the white and blue ones that you see on the video that we're wearing, or an N95 are both medical. A KN95, not medical. A cloth mask, not medical.
Okay, so teachers are not wearing like their own homemade like fabric masks in the schools then?
True.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Kathy? Thanks, Kath. Good information. Kath, draft reporting schedule. It's for information. Anything you want to add to it? Any questions on the draft reporting schedule? Something that we put together that she brings every time? Okay. Secretary Treasurer, Scott?
Thanks, Paul. I'll go through some of the highlights. The report is there, and I'll be happy to take questions, but a few highlights. So we're working with Derek right now. The application for any portable classrooms for the upcoming school year are due by the end of the month, so we'll work on building a rationale. We are going to apply for some portables this year for both your early years, Oakbank Elementary, and a Cole Dougal School, and that's based on the size and enrollment of those schools. So we'll have those applications into the province by January 31st. I'm not sure how successful we'll be. I know there's a lot of demand for these portable classrooms, but you know, I think with the growth we're experiencing in sort of the south and middle of our division, I think it's better to get this on the province's radar sooner than later. So we'll definitely be submitting applications. I want to give a shout out to Gordon and his team at ICT. They've done some hard work over the last month or so, migrating our student information system. Our SIS, our student information system, is hugely important to the division, particularly our schools, in tracking everything from student attendance to marks and all sorts of things. We migrated our system from Maplewood to a new system called Assembly, and he's done a lot of heavy lifting, not only with migrating data, but also organizing training sessions, particularly for secretaries and school staff who use it the most. So, you know, that's been a bit of a challenge, really ongoing since we came back from the break, and they've done a great job at ICT there, so pat on the back. Transportation was a little bit different last week, obviously. With the suspension of in-class learning, we did still provide transportation services for those students who were children of essential workers. So We did ask our bus drivers to call around and see who was attending school, who wouldn't be. Our 91 regular routes were pretty much immediately reduced to 52 because we had 39 that didn't have any students on them. Once we took a look at those routes and where they went and how many students were on the bus, we were further able to consolidate those down to 48. So we ran about half a complement of buses last week to get students of essential workers into school last week. I also want to give Jason a pat on the back. Paul mentioned this, but you know, and Kathy and Jason do most of the heavy lifting. I generally get up and provide input where I can from my deck in St. James, but it is a little rough on all of us when we're up in the morning checking roads. We are up at definitely 5 in the morning, taking a look at the weather, and you know, if we're going like we are today, you know, Jason's that guy who's been up at 5 in the morning 3 days in a row, and on the third day trying to get buses going. So it is a lot of work, and it definitely tuckers people out. So I appreciate the fact that he came and presented to us tonight. Finance, we're going to touch on, I think, there's a piece in here on some feedback to provide, the province has asked for to provide on a review of their funding model. We spoke at length at Finance Committee today on this. There is a separate agenda item, so I won't touch on it too much. But Finance on their plate right now is obviously they're extremely busy with processing and preparing T4s that'll be sent out. Target date, the middle of February. When I asked payroll, you know, for an update I could provide to the board, they said no promises, but we've never missed our deadline before, so we'll have them out by the middle of February for sure.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Anybody in the room? Trustee Duma?
Do we still operate 2 handicap buses? I thought we did.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dan. I'd have to check on that. I think we might even have 3. I know we have 1 in Beausejour for sure. I'd have to double check on that, get you the info.
Anyone online have a question?
Trustee Peczkowski.
Go ahead.
So Scott, you spoke about portable classrooms, and we had some brief discussions on it, I think, before that this evening. But I would like to speak specifically, or ask a question, I guess, specifically to schools in my ward or my area. So I understand we've seen some growth in student population at EBYS, and we also have another school in Tyndall with portable classrooms that, as far as I understand, aren't all being used as classrooms. So I guess my question is, has the French immersion enrollment gone up that much at EBYS? You know, where we have empty classrooms in Tyndall, and yet we're over capacity at EBYS. And I'm just interested in the school of choice numbers at that school, and are they is that in relation to French immersion, or kind of what's the issue there? And I mean, we have some portables that aren't being used as classrooms, is my understanding, and so just looking for some more information on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. With regard to some of the portable classrooms we have now that aren't being used, I'll be completely honest with you, the province hasn't asked for them back, so I haven't offered. You know, we have growth in some of the areas where we have portables that are not being used. Our experience, and I'll be completely blunt about this, we're a little frustrated when we expanded Dugald and they took away the portables, because we knew there was further increases in enrollment coming and we were going to need them. So I don't want to go to the province and offer them back if there's a chance we're going to need them in 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, which is essentially what's happening in Dugald. Yeah, so, you know, if they ever came to me and said, you're not using those, we're taking them away, which is essentially what happened in Dugald after the expansion. I mean, we don't have a choice. They're property of the province. There is a significant cost to move them by the time you connect them to electrical and heat and water and everything. You know, there's a pretty good cost to add them to your facility or take them away from your facility. The province funds that, so generally speaking, we're not on the hook. But I'd rather keep them if we have them, if that makes sense, and that's a completely honest answer. In terms of the School of Choice students at Bays, I mean, we'd have to look into those numbers and get back to you on that, unless Kathy has any additional info. Yeah. So Kathy just mentioned she doesn't have it here. We'd have to look into that, Jared, and get back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Anyone, other questions online?
Yeah, Trustee Inslee, you kind of answered this, Scott, but my question was with regard to the portable classroom. So they can ask us for them back then, so that we don't necessarily keep them forever.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, Principal Federley and Kathy and I argued with the province at length for about a month before we couldn't convince them that they weren't getting those portables back from Dugald. So if they call them back in, yeah, we don't really have too much to say. We can try and make an argument, but they have the ultimate say on that.
So do they actually come and inspect and see whether you're using them or utilising them enough, or is it like the school division volunteers that information?
No, they don't. They haven't asked about other schools or other facilities. I think the red flag with Dugald was that we had an expansion. So, you know, we justified the expansion based on the increased enrollment. We added, I believe it was 6 classrooms and a gymnasium, and once we did that, the province said, oh, you should be good now, we're going to take the portables back. So I think, honestly, I think that was the, what got us on the radar in Dugald was the expansion of the facility.
Oh, okay, I'm just asking because, like, of Oakbank Elementary, that if portable classrooms were put at the elementary school, then what would the process be with regard to monitoring whether they were being used enough? Because I know that Oakbank Elementary School capacity is high, but I just wondered, you know, whether there's a checks and balances system and somebody does come and check, obviously, because Oakbank Elementary School probably won't be going through an expansion like Dugald did. So that's why I was just asking, like, about, you know, if they want to take them back, could we argue the fact no, because Oakbank Elementary School is not going to be expanded like Dugald was? So that was just my question.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I mean, I can tell you I don't do any reporting to the province. Having said that, of course, for all of our schools, we report our enrollment, and I would assume that they know where their portable assets are. So if they have some sort of internal process, I couldn't speak to that.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions? 3 questions from me, Scott. One is I ran into Derek today as I was dropping off lunch at Powerview School, and they were having capital project meetings, and capital project meetings certainly about a potential science room, so that he just told me that he was there. So, and they're also doing that, I think, at Whitemouth and at Lac Du Bonnet Senior. That was interesting. It says here, given growth areas in Beauce early years and the Oakbank and Dugald area, we've had a number of subdivisions that are being proposed to us. This would be some kind of a good information, probably going back to the RMs, is that we're already applying for portables for our classrooms, and as these subdivisions come in with more people, do you know what? Why do we want then the finances to be set aside to go ahead and support the classrooms? Well, here's our ask now, without those subdivisions around, and now as those subdivisions come in, it might be something that we add to it. And then you also made a comment about ICT and the work that Gord's doing. That's great. I think that we just ran into. You made comment earlier that we've just changed now from Maplewood our teaching the system that the student system that our teachers use, and maybe not tonight. Maybe there's a time that you can tell us certainly about how that process has gone, moving from from Maplewood to, I'm not even sure what the name of the new system is. And if you have the answer, great, but if not, go ahead. Thanks, Kath.
So we haven't changed student information systems. The company EdSembly bought out Maplewood, and we've just moved from a server-based to a cloud-based. It's not a full-on switch. So it's training the secretarial staff and the back-end users on how to use a cloud-based model. That's all.
And so has the change gone well?
Yeah, decently well in the offices. There's a couple of glitches that they're working through. There was one this afternoon that they had solved within 90 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Any others? All right, so here none, we're going to move on. Board business COVID costs. Scott, you've given us some update. Anything to add?
No, nothing earth-shattering. They're still trending as we have been all year.
Any questions for Scott about COVID costs? Okay. Decision-making matrix. Jared, did you want to talk anything about this?
I don't have anything to add right now. I think we're close. We're going to be meeting again.
I don't think we're there, but we're pretty close. Thanks, Jared. You're right. And there was some good work done by the board the other night. We did say that we would come back to it, to come back with some information that you and I were to work on, and that needs to get out to the board. Questions for anyone? 8.3 is grade 3 and 4 provincial assessments. Kath?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief highlight of this. So there is a letter attached to the attachments. There's a lot of attachments on your ESB, but one of the letters is the province talking about how they are revising and revisiting their assessment procedures. They're keeping the 3 and 4 right now. They're keeping the 7 and 8, but they're shifting grade 12 assessments down to grade 10. Right now, the grade 3 and 4 assessments are taking place, and we had some questions last time I brought this to the board around, well, what are those and how do we compare to others? So we don't have the results from the province just yet, and in the report I would have made mention that I'm not sure with the pandemic and all the other stuff on the go if we're going to get the results on the same time. So instead of being able to bring you the results, I wanted to highlight for you that we do grade 3 assessments in numeracy at grade 3 in the English and French program. We do reading assessments at grade 3 in the English program and the French immersion program for reading in English. And then we do the assessment for reading in French at the grade 4 level for the French immersion students. I've included for you the assessments that teachers do with kids. So right now on the website that you would see in the report, that is the rubric or the matrix that they would use when they're assessing where kids are at, and those are all teacher-given assessments that they then upload to the province, and the province gives us data back on how we're doing compared to ourselves and to the rest of the province. So I thought it was important for you to see what that assessment looked like if we couldn't bring the results.
Questions for Kathy? So Kathy, we don't have results. Do you know when there potentially would results be?
I do not.
So right now we don't quite know how we're doing, or do we?
Yeah, our schools know how they're doing because they gather that information on their own students. But in terms of being able to say, how am I doing compared to other grade 3s in the province? How am I doing compared to, different demographics? We don't have that kind of data, but the teachers would have the data on their own students as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Paul, it's Diane. When would that data normally have been provided or been concluded?
So teachers do that assessment in October, November, and we very typically get it towards the middle of January to the end of January, and we haven't really heard word on whether or not that will be coming at the end of January or whether we'll get it later. I wanted to flag it, and as soon as we have it, I will bring it, but I don't know whether that timeline from the province will be met or whether they've changed some things. So I will look into that, but we very typically around the end of January to middle of February get that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to bus purchase report. Scott, it's for information. Is there anything to add?
Yeah, nothing really except for, obviously we'll be making that decision as part of the budget process. I think the impetus for getting this report on the agenda was that, we're always kind of scrambling at the last minute at the end of March. We approve the budget and then we have to approve the bus purchase. So just kind of getting those things together. I think, we should be, according to some of the ratios, buying about 5 to 7 buses a year. I think we've traditionally done that over the last 6, 7, 8 years. So I think our fleet is in pretty decent shape. So I think we can get away with doing a little less than that, but again, you know, short-term fix, we certainly couldn't do that for multiple years in a row, but there is a recommendation there. But I want to reserve the right to change that recommendation depending on obviously what the funding announcement looks like, but it's all there. So.
This is information, and we'll talk more about it as we find out with regard to funding and where we stand. Okay? Anything from anyone? Okay, we're going to move on. 8.5, the policy committee has provided a notice of motion for these two motions that were there. Before we read the motions, Chair Harris, did you receive anything from anybody about amendments to these motions?
I did not.
Okay. All right, so policy number 21, be it resolved the board approve the inclusion of policy 21, COVID-19 proof of vaccination or testing in the Sunrise School Division's board policy manual. Are you moving this motion, Trustee Harris? Motion by Trustee Harris, seconded by Trustee Nichol. Any questions to this motion? Trustee Duma?
So this was just created by the policy committee based off the template that we got from MSBA? Is that how you did it?
That's, yes. Mm-hmm. We met several times and tweaked it to meet our specific needs.
So it was shrunk considerably, and then there's procedures that go along with this? So the procedures aren't here? Okay. So I guess I just always look at how policies read differently when I get them, like one of them we're looking at later talks about purpose, scope, and then this one has the policy. Like they're quite different in the way they look and the way they're presented. So I guess I see this as a policy of what does Sunrise School Division want to do, but it really isn't. It's almost like a mandate from the province to create this policy, or a mandate from MSBA. My big concern is that there hasn't been any feedback up to MSBA from us as to the delegation that came down. And that's, I guess, where I'm stuck, where the process of discussion hasn't happened at the board table over such a very almost life-altering decision. We just haven't had that discussion here.
Well, Trustee Harris did provide at our last meeting a notice of motion and a discussion, and if there was any questions certainly about it. My understanding is, Trustee Harris, is that if anybody had any questions and if they wanted to bring it up, they certainly could. Did I miss something, Trustee Harris?
That's how I would summarize it.
I don't think that I'm asking the policy committee the question. I'm just putting this out to the board to say this is something that kind of came in through the province, came through MSBA, and then came to the division without the boards first looking at it at the table saying, do we have any feedback to MSBA or the province as to this whole process to begin with? And there really wasn't that. It was pushed right into a policy committee. So that's all I'm saying. I just find it, in terms of a body that has a role to represent its public, no matter what we're tasked to do, I think that this piece, we've left out the piece of talking to our public, and we've left out the piece of, because of the steps that were taken directly from the province. So I just find that it's unfortunate that their piece of feedback and the impact of 2 years, where we didn't have that chance to just take that to the public and provide feedback back up the chain.
Thank you for your comments. Any others?
Yeah, Trustee Inslee, I did mention this at the previous meeting when this was brought in, because I just have, I mentioned it last time, that I have concerns with the wording, some of the wording, because like I referenced how that this policy is reviewed on an annual basis. I'm not comfortable with this being something annual. I mean, like, do we not have a communicable disease policy and procedure already? Is it not something that we've got in our policy procedures manual? This is for the policy chair. Did I miss something?
You want to answer that for me? Superintendent Timko?
Yeah, so in our procedure manual, we do have a procedure that comes again in line with public health around communicable diseases. So that's there, and we have reviewed that as part of the policy committee to update it to include COVID as well. This is particularly around language for visitors and guests in our buildings, and it also lines up with not just MSB, but the public health order, if that helps.
So if we have a communicable disease policy and procedures already, can that not be modified to, say, including diseases such as COVID-19 as opposed to a separate policy? And as I said last time, it was just that and reviewing it on an annual basis just to me seems too long, because as it was discussed at the last meeting, things can change daily, let alone weekly, monthly, annually, and I just have got hesitancy with like some of the wording, that's all. So, like I say, I mean, if we have a communicable disease policy, was it not an option to have this as revise what policy we've got already?
So Trustee Inslee, the policy committee was tasked with bringing a policy together, and they gave notice of motion last time that they were bringing this forward. They haven't heard anything certainly before, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Timko, we have a procedure. This is certainly about a policy that we're putting into place, correct?
Yeah, so the board's work is developing a policy, and then when a policy is put into place, the administration through me are tasked with making procedures that line up with that policy. So I'm not making up procedures prior to a policy being passed, and then those procedures can change without board approval, but the board has the job of the policy itself.
So we have the notice of motion. Go ahead,
okay.
Go ahead, Trustee Inslee.
I've never experienced this before with regard to, because it does say that this policy could be rescinded, revised or rescinded. So what's the process for rescinding one? Is it just how does it get removed from our policy manual?
So the whole process for bringing policy forward or revising policy or rescinding policy is in both your board policy manual and your operational bylaw. If you want, I can email you the sections, but that's where that process lives.
Okay, I just haven't referred to that for a little while, so I can look it up. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. So we're going to move forward with again the policy. It's been motioned in second. We're going to go ahead and vote. We're just having some difficulty with one trustee about voting, so we're just holding on here. Okay, so we have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstained. Thank you for that. We now have policy number 22. Be it resolved that the board approve the inclusion of policy number 22, senior admin contract negotiations, in the Sunrise School Division Board Policy Manual. This has also been a notice of motion. This is coming from the Policy Committee. Trustee Harris, are you moving this policy? Trustee Harris is moving it. I need a seconder. Trustee Nichol. Any questions of this policy? Trustee Duma?
I have to find it, but I was looking at the language using, the language calling it a smooth, and I just thought we could use better language than that. And I have to find where I put my notes. Purpose: to ensure the smooth negotiation process with senior administration positions of Sunrise School Division. And I personally don't see that as the purpose. My point on our discussions at the board table and what I thought the purpose of having a policy was that the board has the responsibility to negotiate and renegotiate senior administration contracts, and that the board will be proactive and establish annually the timelines necessary to complete the task. So I just changed the whole purpose. I see it differently. And I only came up with that today, so that's my proposal for thinking that.
Thank you. So we've got the notice of motion was made. It's not prior to it. Is there anyone else that wants to change that? Okay, hearing.
I like what Trustee Duma just said.
What did sorry, Karen, do you want to repeat that?
I like what Trustee Duma just said. Somebody's got the microphone on. I just would like Trustee Duma to repeat her, I don't know whether it was a proposal, Diane.
So Trustee Duma, do you want to make an amendment to this motion?
You know, it's a difficult one because I'm just passing it to people right now, and I really feel bad about making people come to a quick decision because I really do have a different thinking on this policy. And I just wonder if it would be okay just to send that back to the policy, let them have one more look at it. If everybody thinks it's great the way it is, then don't waste your time, but it doesn't read to me what I want it to be. But I think it's worth having them look at it again if people want to look at it. And my statement was the board has the responsibility to negotiate and renegotiate senior administration contracts. The board will be proactive and establish annually the timelines necessary to complete the task. And that would be in the purpose statement.
So Trustee Duma is asking tonight that the motion not move forward, and that go back to policy committee to look at the purpose. I'm just going to go around and saying, are people fine on voting it tonight, or would you like to change the purpose? I'll move with you. Trustee Nichol? Are you fine with moving forward with it, or would you like to bring it back to the policy committee? Trustee Nichol says move forward. Trustee Reed? Trustee Harris?
Move forward.
Trustee Duma, you obviously would like to take it back. Trustee Berry?
Yeah, I'd like to have it, take it back to purpose. I'm okay with the process of the committee members, but I still think it's up to the board to approve the recommendation of the committee members. So I'd like the board to be as part of the purpose.
Trustee Ainsley, would you like to take it back, or are you fine about moving forward?
Take it back to the policy.
Trustee Pachakowski?
I appreciate all the work the policy committee has done, and I would like to just carry it forward.
Trustee Rowland?
I would just like to make one comment about the wording, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I think what I'm hearing is that you're saying, Trustee Duma, that you would like to renegotiate the contract, but in actuality, we aren't renegotiating the contract for our senior administration. They have employment contracts to be hired, and what we would be, and what we referred to in the policy, is renegotiate the salary or possibly other terms that they would maybe bring forward or we would bring forward, but they are not being terminated contracts at an end of a date. They're permanent employees, so their contracts are not being renewed. They could give 6 months notice, and we could give them 6 months notice, but the contract's not being terminated, but the terms of it is being renewed. So I'm okay with going forward in that regard, because I think the wording should not be referring to the contracts, because their employment contracts are permanent. It's the terms that can be renegotiated. Move forward.
Thanks, Trustee Rowland. And myself, I'm fine with moving forward. So we have 6 trustees that are fine about moving forward and 3 are not. So go ahead, Trustee Duma.
I totally appreciate the response, but in the very same document that you're looking at, you actually talk about renegotiating and negotiating. So I didn't change anything. I just don't like the idea that we're calling it a smooth process.
Thank you. So we're going to move forward with it because we have 6 trustees that are fine about moving forward with it. So we have a mover and a seconder. Stacy, we're going to now vote. So it passed 6 in favor and 3 are opposed. Thank you. Funding model review. That's you, Scott.
Yeah, I'll maybe give some background. We had a good discussion at Finance Committee about this, so I'll pass it off to Trustee Nicol maybe to present some ideas. But the bottom line is that the province is looking at our funding model and the way that schools are funded and is reviewing the entire model and is seeking feedback from school divisions. So the timeline is a little questionable at this point in time. The intent was to start the process February 1st. It looks like the pandemic has delayed that a little bit, and they're still sort of up in the air as to when it may start. But I think we talked about it, and I'll leave it to Trustee Nicol to present some ideas about how we may approach it.
When we had the finance meeting today, we talked about it, and we are calling a special meeting for the finance committee to brainstorm some ideas. Hopefully we'll have that done by the end of February, and then we'll present it to the board, and they can add or subtract whatever we have done, and then we'll be ready by the end of February. So if the province says it's got to be in by the 1st of March, we're ready. Well, whenever they tell us we've already got it ready, we don't have to scramble. So we've been a little bit proactive.
Thanks. Okay, information, any other comments? Thanks, Scott, for doing that. Obviously, some important things coming up with the funding model and where it is. I guess we're all anxious to find out what the announcement will be, and we'll see where we get to. There is 8.8, a subdivision in the arm of Springfield. It's for information. Is there anything to add to it, Scott? Any questions from anyone? Okay, we have 8.9 Policy Committee update. Trustee Harris?
We have our next meeting is February 10th.
Thank you. Finance Committee update. Trustee Nicol?
We just had a meeting today, so our next meeting is, I think it's February the... That's a special meeting. Let's see. 17th, sorry. Okay. Next meeting is the 17th.
It's on there. It says Trustee Magno is the signing authority for the month of January. We have a Finance Committee. We do not have a check register, correct? Okay, thank you. Professional development information. There is something that you were sent today, and it's with regard to, Stacy, help me if I'm wrong, it's about the capsule conference. And I did send this out to you today, and we don't have to discuss it, but then we need to give them information. So basically what it is, do you believe the capsule conference, and correct me, Stacy, tell me if I'm wrong, the capsule conference is about whether it should be virtual or in person. Is that correct, Stace?
Sorry, Paul, I don't think that was CAPSUL, that was CSBA, which is the Canadian School Boards Association.
Thank you, Scott. So we need to decide as a group, and again, no, please find attached information regarding the May Capsule Conference. Please advise by January 28th if you wish to attend. No, that's not it. Well, I sent it out to everybody. Didn't everybody see it today?
The one I saw was about the CSBA, I thought, because it's in Saskatchewan this year, and they wanted to know whether we wanted it virtual or if they wanted to make exceptions and have Manitoba drive over there if they were willing to cross the border.
Thank you, Dan. I knew I said something out. So thoughts with people, we need to give them our response as a board. Is this something that you want to email me? Do you want to discuss very quickly? Is it something virtual or is it something in person? Or do people have an opinion? Trustee Duma?
I think we're still too unsure about what's going on. I think I'd rather do virtual.
I'm going to quickly go around the room and see what opinions. Trustee Barry? Trustee Barry said virtual. Trustee Duma said virtual. Trustee Harris?
Having lived in the beautiful city of Saskatoon for a number of years, if it's Saskatoon, I say go. No, to be safe, we should have it virtual.
Trustee Reed? There is a conference coming up, and whether the conference, we should have the opportunity to go to it to Saskatoon, or do you think that our opinion should be that it should be virtual? You said you would probably go, okay? Trustee Nickel?
Virtual.
Trustee Pachakowski?
I've never really been in favor of sending trustees out of province for anything, so I'm definitely opposed to. I'd like to see it virtual.
Trustee Inslee?
Virtual.
Trustee Rowan?
Virtual,
Okay,
fine.
so we know what our position is to go back. Stacey, are we good about you and I working on it so that we can send it off? Okay, thank you. All right, so we have board correspondence, MSBA attendance meeting requirements. It's for information. You have some nice to know stuff. Scott, do we have any questions from the public?
Yes, we do. We have 2 questions from the public and one comment that I circulated to all trustees. I don't know if you want me to read the questions, Mr. Chair, or?
I haven't seen the questions, so go ahead.
Okay, so first question is from Rob, who lives on Sapton Road here in our division. It's quite lengthy. I will just say that he has a child in our division who is struggling a bit with her courses due to the fact that she's wearing a mask, particularly in some language courses, French language. So I will go straight to the question. I would like to see Sunrise's data and tracking on the academic progress, especially in language-intensive areas. What hardships the students have encountered and what Sunrise has done to combat the obvious unproductive learning environment.
So my response to that question would go back to the superintendent, and the superintendent said, has any parent gone to the school and asked the school their teacher? Has they gone and asked their principal? And if they haven't been satisfied, have they gone to ask you? Kath, is that the process?
That would be the process, classroom teacher, principal, and then myself. I guess the one question that is at the beginning of the email talks about what is the Sunrise School Division doing to combat the detriment to the learning environment of wearing masks. We're being proactive with doing video work and doing work that we can record without masks when people are in their own home, but we don't have any control over whether people can or cannot be unmasked in public places. So I just want to point that out. And then again, the process you outlined is correct.
And the next question, Scott?
This question is from a very concerned citizen from Oak Bank, Manitoba, who would like to know who won the high school hockey game last night between Powerview and SCR.
So, there was no hockey game last night, but I think that somebody's talking about the last hockey game. And SCI did beat Powerview, and there's a rematch coming up next week. Thank you to that concerned principal out of SCI.
It's also a reference to the fact that the chair is supposed to be wearing an SCI jersey tonight, is it?
Well, there needs to be an SCI jersey provided, so we'll see where that goes. Thank you. Any other questions?
No further questions. There is some feedback from one concerned member of our division that I have forwarded, but no question to address tonight, so the trustees have a copy of that.
Okay, thank you. So we do need to move into in-camera. It's 9:10. I'm going to give everybody about a 3-4 minute break, and then let's come... Oh, sorry, Trustee Nichol.
If we go back into camera, I don't think we can get it finished by 9:30, so do you think we should make a motion now when we end regular?
Smart man. Go ahead and make that motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to extend the meeting for an extra 20 minutes.
Oh, Pachkowski, second.
After 9:30, of course.
So we're going to extend the meeting till 10 to 10?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's a motion to extend the meeting till 10 to 10, seconded by Trustee Pachkowski. Questions? Go ahead, Trustee Duma.
Can we just say up to 10 o'clock or earlier before, if the meeting is completed, if the agenda is completed?
Are you good with the amendment till 10 o'clock?
Yeah, if we want to go to 10 o'clock, that's okay too.
Trustee Pachkowski, you good till 10 o'clock?
Yeah, it's fine.
Trustee Barry, good to 10 o'clock? Trustee Duma, good to 10 o'clock? Trustee Harris, good to 10 o'clock? Trustee Reed, good to 10 o'clock? Yes. Trustee Inslee, are you good to 10 o'clock?
Yep.
Trustee Rowland, you good to 10 o'clock?
I will make it, yeah.
Okay, so we're back from in camera. Can I just check, Karen, are you there? Trustee Inslee?
Yep.
Trustee Pachkowski?
Yes.
And Trustee Rowland?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion that is, be it resolved that the board offer the position of Assistant Superintendent, Learning and Support Services as recommended by the hiring committee effective beginning May 2nd, 2022. Need a mover. So Trustee Nichols moving that motion. Is there a seconder? Trustee Harris is seconding it. Any comments to the motion? Stacy, we can vote by electronically? Okay. We'll vote. So it passed 9-0. Thank you for that. We don't have anything else, so we're adjourned. Have a good one.